Are you sick of feeling like you aren't good at budgeting? Like, no matter what you do, you will never be able to stick to your budget? All this does is fuel your stress, your worries, and your anxieties, making budgeting hard and a task that you don't ever want to do, right? This is a common feeling and something that can be managed with the flip of one little thought. It is this one thought that is keeping you from sticking to your budget and feeling like a failure every time you sit down and attempt to budget. And it's this one thought that we are going to be talking about today so that you can start budgeting with less stress. So go get your drink, open your heart to God, and let's dive in. If you're ready to build wealth, ensure financial security, stop overspending, and finally create a budget you can stick to, you mama are in the right place. Hi, I'm Molly, a budget coach and financial strategist who went from living paycheck to paycheck to paying off debt, saving money, and going on vacation, all by budgeting. And I help mamas just like you budget and create God-centered systems and routines so that you too can have financial freedom. Now stop pinching those pennies and let's dive in. Before we get going, this is a great time to let you know, if you don't already, that there's a wonderful community of mamas just like you getting more support with their budgets in the Budgeting with Confidence community. This is a great community where you get more support not only from me, but from other mamas who have already or are going through the same struggles. Budgeting is not easy, especially if you're doing it on one income or feel like your money is all over the place. But the great thing is you don't have to do it alone. Come join the free community over on Facebook and let's connect. Let's get to know each other so that I can help you and give you the support and little push that you may need to get moving on the path towards financial security when you build a recurring, stable budget. Now, don't worry if you're not on Facebook. You can still get the same support and connect with me by becoming an insider when you join my email list. So hit pause right now and grab yourself some extra support and accountability by joining the Budgeting with Confidence community or email list. You can join the community by going to bit.ly/BWC community, or join the insiders list by going to bit.ly/BWC insiders list. Now don't worry if you didn't catch those links, you can also find them in the show notes. Alrighty, now I bet you are chomping at the bit trying to figure out what this one thing could be to get better at budgeting with, right? Well, it's not what you expect. And I will say what it is. It's perfectionism. Perfectionism is killing your budget. And if you're like me, which I'm sure you are, otherwise you wouldn't be here trying to fix your budget so that you can budget better and do things with less stress and more joy and excitement and be able to reach and achieve your goals, right? Because that is the overall goal, is to be able to build wealth with the money you have rather than trying to bring in more income in order to do it, right? You gotta start where you're at so that when you do bring in more money, you don't just slip into lifestyle creep and use up that money in some other way, shape, or form, right? And so that is why this episode is so important, because perfectionism is one of the big things, like on the mental side of budgeting, that's keeping you from being able to stick to it. And I know in the past few episodes, we've been talking about contentment and discontentment and all of the other things in that relation, right? But I just got to thinking, I'm like, perfectionism really kills it more than those things, because when you sit down to budget, you may be thinking about all this stuff, trying to compare and trying to be like everybody else. But even if you're not, you go to sit down and you go to budget and you create this elaborate plan, or maybe it's just a simple, easy one that you're like, this is usually what we do. This is the path that we follow. But then at the end of the month, you're like, I'm not actually following this plan. Like, this is what I feel like I should be following. But life happens and I give in to things and I just can't do it, right? And that is where the perfectionism stems. We create this plan and then we expect ourselves, and expectations are so dangerous if you're not careful with them. But we expect ourselves to be perfect, to follow the plan 100% to a T with no that's not the right word, but with no fault, right? To do it exactly right. And that is just not realistic. That is not something that will ever happen, right? We are humans. The only human that was ever perfect was Jesus. And we can strive to be as perfect and as good as he was, but we are still sinners because we are human. We are here on this earth. When we die and we go to heaven, it'll be a different story, right? But here on this earth, we are human and we are imperfect. We are going to fall to sin. We are going to fall to temptation. We are going to give up on something because it's hard. It's life. It's who we are. So instead of striving for perfectionism, we need to strive for improvement, right? And here I'm giving away some of my tips, but that is the ultimate goal. And I want you to know that you are not alone here. Like, even though I have this plan in place that I absolutely love and I teach about, the budgeting systems that I teach on are great and awesome, and they're going to help you 100%. But that does not mean that I do not fall prey to perfectionism. That does not mean that I do not expect my husband and my children to be perfect and to follow this plan that I have created. And then I get upset when it doesn't get followed. And I have really had to rein that in and work on my mental side of things when it comes to budgeting, because I am so focused on goals and reaching my goals and being perfect that sometimes it puts me into inaction, right? And so that is one thing that I don't want you to fall prey to. I want you to jump in and do the thing, to work on it, to say, okay, I'm not perfect at this, but practice makes perfect. And if I don't practice what I'm trying to do, I will never get perfect. Now, no, you're never going to get perfect, but you will get better. You will learn things. You will be able to put boundaries in place that are going to serve you instead of putting somebody else's boundaries in place. You are going to be able to know, well, no matter what I do, this is how much money I have to pay towards groceries, even though I would love to spend less on it, right? It's just not possible to go below, because these are the things that are important to us, not because you can't cut costs, but because you prioritize something else, and so you allow yourself to have that money go towards that thing, right? There's so much learning in a budget. There's so much learning in who your family is, what their joys are, what excites them. The life changes. Like, budgeting is not set in stone. And most of the time when we are focused on perfectionism, it's because we are trying to set it in stone. Now, yes, I talk about recurring numbers that you don't have to change, because yes, there are seasons, and seasons allow you to have consistent income that gets to be put towards certain categories, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't go in and change them. That doesn't mean that life's not going to happen and you're not going to have to go in and change them, right? There are things that are going to happen. Your priorities are going to shift. The things that bring you joy are going to shift. The things that your children do as they get older are going to change and shift. Your husband, that's just life, right? Things are constantly changing and shifting. That is the one thing you can expect in life, is constant changing and shifting. And you have to allow your budget to shift and change with those things. And when we get so set in stone in the things that we are doing and we're like, no, I don't want to change it, and we just fight it and fight it and fight it, that's where the stress comes from. That's where the perfectionism comes from. That's where not being able to stick to your budget comes from, because you are not in a state of learning and curiosity, but you're in a state of being stuck where you're at in what used to work but doesn't work now. I am right there with you in this, right? I set up a budget and I'm like, I don't want to go in and change it. I don't want to have to do all that work again. But if I don't, then my budget's not going to serve me. It's not going to serve my family. It's not going to achieve our goals that have changed compared to what they used to be, right? Or the fact that we have grown as a family, it's not going to be able to support our growing family. And so that is why I have created this episode, because it is so important for you to understand that perfectionism and expectations are key in whether you are budgeting with joy or whether you are budgeting in stress and overwhelm, right? Okay, so I want to dive into 3 ways that you can start releasing this perfectionism. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to snap your fingers and this is going to work right away, right? But these are 3 things that I want you to think about. And I do, if you have the time, if you're not doing anything right now while you're listening to this, grab a pen and paper and write this stuff down, right? Do this with me so that you can actually have some action in place towards this work and start seeing fruit from it today instead of way further down the line, right? So the 3 things. So the first one that I'm going to talk about to help you stop the endless cycle of perfectionism and over expectations is to define it, right? You need to know what it means to budget for you. What does a budget look like for you and your family? What does it consist of? What are your priorities? What is important to you and your family? When you are able to define what your budget is supposed to be about, the story that it tells, because budgeting tells a story. If I were a stranger, which I am to you, if I were to look at your budget, I want to be able to know what's important to you. I want to be able to know if you are enjoying life or you're just living on a bare bones budget, right? I will be able to know that by looking at your budget. And if I can't look at your budget and find your priorities, then you're just budgeting to budget, right? You're just trying to follow numbers that don't feel like your family, that aren't actually important to you. And that's why it's so important to figure out what your priorities are, to define your budget, to know what your family is all about, what brings you joy, what brings you excitement. Yes, there are standard categories, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be set in stone. You would be surprised at how different somebody else's budget is set up compared to yours. Because what is important to you is not important to somebody else, right? And that's the thing that we have to be okay with. We have to be okay with not having the same priorities, the same standards, the same values as other people, and just set up our budget in a way that's going to give us joy and freedom. The second thing I want you to do to try to manage this perfectionism is identify what your standards are. And I know it kind of seems like the same thing as the last one, but when you know where you're at with yourself, where you're at with your husband, where you're at with your kids, are you expecting perfectionism from everybody? Are you expecting everybody to agree 100% with this budget that you have created? And yes, you're going to try to put them in there. You're going to try to do things that are honoring to them, but you're still going to be biased a little bit. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. If you're the one setting it up and you're doing it by yourself, then it's not going to be 100% what somebody else wants, right? Unless you are sitting down doing it with them and compromising the whole way, then yes, there's going to be a little bias in the budget, right? I am right there with you. I do that a lot. I say, okay, these are the numbers. My husband knows what they are, but does he follow them 100%? No, because why? He's human. He falls to temptation. He likes his food. He likes to eat out, right? And that is where I've just grown to know and expect that. That is where a true good expectation lies, because you know what is going to be happening instead of what you want to be happening, and you expect them to follow your wants versus expecting what's actually going to happen in reality, the temptations that they have. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't work on them together. That doesn't mean that you can't set boundaries in place. That doesn't mean that you can't do things to help try to prevent that and grow yourself, grow your husband, grow your children as a person. But it still means that you are putting your expectations in the right spot, right? And so when you are identifying where your standards lie, where your expectations lie, it's going to make it so much easier. And if you release the unrealistic expectations and you start embracing what is true, what is actually happening, so that then you can create systems and routines and boundaries together with that person and start working on them, then it's going to make a huge shift. But you also have to make sure that your priority is the same as their priority. Like, my husband wants to eat out. No matter how hard I try to stop him, he wants to eat out. And so I have learned to expect that, right? But I've also wanted him to stop and to slow down, and I've put boundaries in place and I've put things in place to help him to cut back on that. And he just seems to shift what he's eating. So instead of a full meal, he now gets a coffee because he needs to stay awake, even though he takes coffee with him. I'm like, oh my gosh, boy, I can't do this. You make no sense to me. He just likes to spend money on food, right? And so that expectation is so helpful in keeping me from getting angry and upset and stressed and trying to put that money towards something else, because I know that it's not reality. Now, there may be times where he's like, okay, yeah, it is important to me to cut back on some of this so that we can reach this goal faster. We can try to pay off our debt faster. And if he's on board with it, then it's so much easier. But if he's not on board with it, it's like pulling teeth. But then on the flip side of things, that can be the same reality for yourself, right? You could be holding yourself up on this pedestal thinking that you are perfect, that you're going to be able to follow this plan to a T, that everything's going to run smoothly. And sometimes it does, and you get excited about it. But then on days that it doesn't, it's like, oh man, boo-hoo. You get so upset, right? I get that way too. I get so down on myself. I get so upset because I wasn't able to follow the plan. But I have to realize that I'm not perfect. And sometimes when I sit down to budget, what I think my priorities are and what my true priorities end up being when I'm out there spending money and in the moment are not the same. Like, have you realized that? Have you noticed that sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this is important to me. But then when I go to spend my money, I realize it's not actually important to me. Or if it is, that other thing in the moment just seems to take over because I'm not following through with what is truly a priority, and I'm giving in to the temptation, right? And that is where I just need to expect that stuff to happen and build in like ways in my budget to allow that to happen and it not affect things, right? But still have boundaries in place to help prevent it, still have systems and routines and strategize for a thing that allows me to not do that thing, a boundary, right? Figure out a limit or a number that I'm okay with doing that on, and then challenge myself to cut back if I can, right? So expecting myself to quit something cold turkey, especially if it's something that I haven't realized is something that I have been doing a lot, then it's an unrealistic expectation. And it's those unrealistic expectations and focusing on trying to be perfect that are keeping you from being able to stick to your budget. Okay, so the third thing that I want you to do is I want you to shift your mindset from I have to get it right to I need to improve, because that is going to change everything, right? When you sit down to budget, instead of going, oh, I have to follow this to a T, everything has to be right, my expectations are high for everybody to be perfect, everybody has to follow my plan because it's my way or the highway. Oh man, that just brings up so many memories saying that right there. But you get what I'm saying, right? Those emotions are negative thoughts. Those thoughts are negative thoughts. They are controlling thoughts for yourself, for your family, for everybody involved, and they keep you from being able to use your money in a joyful way because you're so focused on staying to the plan, on sticking to it, on following it. When in reality, you need to be more flexible, right? You need to allow there to be room to grow, to be able to see what is actually going on, to be curious and learn about who your family is, about what's important to them, about what's important to you, and then to craft a plan, to craft a budget based off of what you've learned. You do this through constant reflection and shifting your focus towards what you can't control and how you can improve the next time, because practice is what you're doing. You are not perfect at this, otherwise you wouldn't be here. I am not perfect at this, even though I've been doing it for a long time and I love my systems, but I am human. I will never be perfect. I will constantly have to refocus, constantly have to reflect, constantly have to be curious and learn about my new season of life and how things are changing and how I need to change the budget in order to support the new season that we are in. Our new likes, the things that are no longer important to us, need to come out of the budget so that we can afford the things that we want to do, right? That is how you budget with peace. That is how you budget without being stressed and worried and anxious all the time, because you are looking at what is actually important to you and you are curious. You are excited to learn and you are focused on improvement instead of perfectionism, because perfectionism keeps you stuck with the same exact numbers every single time, unwilling to change even when life tells you you need to, even when you're shifting into a new season, even when you do give in to temptation. You're still like, oh no, I can't change the numbers because then I won't stick to my budget. We need to allow for wiggle room. We need to allow for space of growth, because only through growth and practice will we get better. We also need to allow for space to not be perfect, to see what is a priority for our whole family instead of just us, right? And it's so hard. It is not easy. It is a lot of work to figure this all out. But once you start practicing it, it will get easier, because just like when you first started playing a sport or you first started singing or you first started reading, it was hard. It was not easy, but you got better and you got better and you got better through the years and the years and the years of practice. Budgeting is not something that we have been doing very long, especially if you're here listening to this episode trying to get better at budgeting. It's something that isn't really taught, isn't really focused on. It's expected of us just to be able to do it, but it is a skill that needs to be learned, that needs to be honed, that needs to be practiced. And when you do that and you focus on improvement over expecting perfection, you are going to make a huge difference in your budget. Alrighty, so let's go over the 3 points again to help manage your expectations of perfectionism, right? So define your budget. What is important to you? What is actually going on? What do you want for your family, right? 2, identify and release your standards. Are you holding yourself, your husband, your kids on a pedestal? Are you trying to make them perfect? Because it's not going to happen. 3, budget based off of improvement versus getting it right the first time, because that is the biggest thing that is going to make a huge difference when you make that little shift right there. So definitely, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I hope and pray that you have been writing stuff down as it's been coming to you. I pray that you have allowed God into your heart and mind so that He can work through you and show you these shifts that maybe need to be changed so that He can speak to you. And I pray that you are able to take this and start making the shift in your budgeting so that you can start budgeting with peace instead of stress and overwhelm. Also, before I hop off, I want to invite you to come join my community over on Facebook. It's free. It's called Budgeting with Confidence. You can get there by going to bit.ly/BWC community. But if you're not on Facebook, totally fine. You can still come and become an insider by joining the insiders list by going to bit.ly/BWC insiders list. And these 2 places are where you can get more support from me. You can ask your questions. We can get to know each other. I know that you feel like you know me because you get to hear all my stories and talk to me through the podcast, but I don't get to know you. And I would love to get to know you, to support you through this so that you are not doing this alone. And we can only do that if you come connect with me, which you can do through Facebook or by joining my list. So with that being said, I pray that you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you back here again next week. Hey mama, I pray that today's episode has inspired you and grew you. If so, will you please share it with that friend who is praying for a budget breakthrough, and leave a rating and review so that you can help get the podcast out to other mamas struggling with their budget. Also, get some support for yourself by joining my free Facebook group and becoming an insider, where you get weekly support emails and are the first to find out when something new is on its way. You can find the links in the show notes, and I will see you right back here next Tuesday.